This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast, brought to you by Hoxo Media. And I am so excited to welcome to our channels today. I would like to think a very familiar face for those leaders and aspiring leaders who are looking to enhance their mindset. This is Andrew Sillitoe, and you are going to introduce yourself to our audience as to what you do. Go for it, Andrew. How are you today?
Hi, Leisha. Thank you so much for inviting me on here today.
Very welcome.
So I'm doing an introduction, am I?
Yes. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So my name's Andrew Sillitoe. I'm a business psychologist, former international athlete and coach. And my main focus is working with leaders. And more recently, I guess the last 3 years, focusing on balanced living in a complex world, which is something very close to my heart. And then we also have a leadership development consultancy business that we run. So I kind of straddling both sides. And very much our leadership business is very much focused on recruitment. So we niche in recruitment.
You do. And, you know, as someone I follow your lives, your videos are, you know, that it's just, for me, it's that one hit of motivation on a sort of daily, weekly basis. I think that anyone who is following you would absolutely agree with that. And the reason I wanted to invite you on here today is I think, you know, we're going to talk about this, particularly your experience around, you know, making sure leaders have that holistic view of their life to make sure that they're well looked after, as well as looking after their teams. Because I think we talked about this off camera very often, you know, the leader's well-being is kind of forgotten about because it's all about focusing on profit and productivity. But actually, it all starts with you as that leader. So first and foremost, let's set some context, because I think, you know, you help leaders effectively start, scale, and then hopefully sell their businesses if that's their aim without burning out. So just to sort of start us off, why do leaders burn out in the first place? Why does this happen?
It's a good question. Get stuck straight into that. So I think there are a couple of things that cause burnout. But if we just kind of look at it from one perspective, and then we'll look at it from a recruitment perspective, because I think it's some of the things that we'll talk about are very unique to recruitment.
Okay.
The challenge we have with burnout, you know, no one gets burnt out doing what they love for the most part. I mean, people do, maybe they go push themselves a little bit too far. They burn the candle at both ends and so on. And maybe, but no one gets burnt out going for a cup of coffee. You know, it's just, as long as we're having fun and we're having, you know, enjoying some level of purpose to it. Where I see burnout is when we think we should be doing something else. So whether that is personal versus professional, you know, we're out with a client, but we feel like we should put the kids to bed, right? Or we are having lunch with our family, but we think we should be on the laptop doing some work. You know, our mind's just getting pulled in different directions, and we're thinking about all these different things. That's one thing. The other thing, I think, the biggest challenge, particularly for small to medium-sized recruitment businesses, and I liken it, I mean, recruitment's like sports in so many ways, but if we look at it from a kind of organizational perspective, majority of business owners in recruitment are the GM of the club. You know, think of a football club, they're the GM, then they're the team head coach, so they're managing the team, and then they're jumping on the pitch and trying to score goals because they're billing as well. And I think that is the biggest challenge when it comes to scaling, is that they either love being on the pitch still, and they can't let go of that. They haven't necessarily developed the leadership skills to be the head coach, or even the strategic skills to think, you know, to do the macro work, because, you know, and it's the same for a lot of people. One day you're a consultant billing, and the next day you're running a business of 50 people. And it's like, how did this happen? You know, so you're kind of thinking about all these, where do I take the business, new offices, new markets? And we're trying to do that strategic work. Then we're trying to deal with the challenge of getting the team aligned and organized and identifying new leaders to help scale. And then we're still managing clients. And so there are a number of things I think that in itself leads to burnout.
Yeah.
So
I'm exhausted just listening to you.
I mean, it's a lot to think about, isn't it?
It gives me anxiety for those people that are doing those things. And actually, I think the analogy is so effective, because when you think about it, it's just ridiculous. How can you expect to be the top goal scorer and still be that one strategically looking at, you know, where's the opposition playing and what do we need to do and where are we in the league and thinking ahead? You can't possibly do all those things and not at some point burn out. So I think that is a very effective way for people who are listening to stop and think, right, who am I in that game? Where am I? And where do I?
Well, that's it. You're right. It's that ability to step back, because by the way, sometimes that's what has to happen. We have to work at those 3 different levels to get the business to where we want to get it to. Then you get the right leaders in place, and then you can step away and delegate stuff and so on. But I think you're right. It's about taking a step back and saying, well, which hat am I wearing right now? And that's my challenge often as a coach, is to say to the leadership team, which hat are you wearing? Because you're talking about operational stuff. You're talking about a consultant who's not hit target this month. And then the next thing you're talking about is, well, where should we open office up? Should we go to open office up in Austin? You know, it's like, well, you can't have that conversation in the same meeting. You know, it's either we're talking about, or just don't have that conversation about the consultant who's not billing. You know, just keep it at this leadership level, and then allow your team leaders to be managing those conversations. And so it's about really challenging ourselves around that table to say, which conversations should we be having right now? Which is going to be the one that moves us forward? Or are we getting too deep into the weeds here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think very often, I mean, you know, I know we're coming at it from a different way, but we're speaking to the same leaders effectively. And I think one of the biggest headaches for any, certainly owner-managed business, is succession planning and the ability to delegate. I mean, I have this conversation all the time where you've got, you know, someone who's effectively a CEO, they've grown the business from their bedroom, you know, it's very successful, no doubt, you know, they're doing really well, but they can't quite let go. They can't quite let go of the reins, and they still enjoy the business development. They still enjoy getting their hands dirty, so to speak. And then they look for that in each of their leaders. But that's where I think, you know, that level of genuine burnout happens. And I think particularly since March 2020, where on a totally different level, that burnout has just become, you know, I mean, that's a pandemic in itself, isn't it?
I think so. And I think that the analogy we use often when it comes to letting go, we talk about the accountant who decided to start his or her own business, right? So they're really good at accounting. They start their own business and they still do the bookkeeping. And they get really annoyed that they're doing the bookkeeping, you know, but they're saying, we say, well, you shouldn't be doing the bookkeeping because you're the CEO. Yeah, but I've got an accountancy background and I can do this, you know, but you're doing a piece of work that's £25 an hour. You should be billing yourself out, or, you know, excellent, you know, and not complain about it. And CEOs in recruitment do the same. You know, it's the same as them going out and being a consultant and dealing with those clients, or doing the onboarding, or, you know, I had a CEO of a company that's got 60 people talking about, I've got to make sure I'm available for the new starters. I'm like, well, at some point you've got to let go of that. As much as it feels good, you got to ask yourself how much of it feels good versus actually being better for the business. Yeah. And in the same conversation, you're complaining because you don't have time with your family, you know. So you've got to let go of something here, like you say. Yeah. We wrote a book called Let Go, because, you know, for CEOs, and that's it. It's just blank pages and just 2 words, let go, because that is the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I don't know if you felt this with your when you're obviously coaching your leaders, but I certainly find this, that a lot of them have become accidental heroes of their own success. And so going back to something you said at the very start of your introduction is establishing that purpose and that why, which sometimes they're at loggerheads, that purpose and why of why you set your business up in the first place. And then it's grown, it's exponentially grown. You've been really successful. You've now got 50, 60 people, and you know you should extract yourself. You shouldn't be interviewing starters. You shouldn't be business developing. You've got to have a more strategic view, but actually your why is still, you enjoy all those things. So how does a leader then ensure that there isn't a conflict almost of what their purpose is versus where the business is right now, so they don't then hold it back? Well,
there are a lot of moving parts there, aren't there? There's just because you're the top goal scorer doesn't mean you're going to make a great leader or GM even. It's not even just being the head coach. You know, we see that in the meritocracy. You know, you're a top biller, so we're going to make you a team leader. But to be a top performing consultant and then become the GM of the business or the GM of the club is a huge difference. I think that everything we're talking about, the listeners listening to this are going, yeah, of course, I get it. You know, intellectually, people get it. You know, it makes absolute sense. But at an emotional level, it's very, very hard to let go. So I often like Ben Hunt Davis's analogy around, will it make my boat go faster? And if we're doing things, you know, me working on this particular topic or project or objective, is it helping me make the boat go faster? Is it helping me get to the goal? And if people can be really honest with themselves, for the most part, they'll probably say it's not helping, and I need to let go of that and trust people, and also recognize that, your team leaders are never going to be ready in your eyes, right? They're never ready. The only time they get ready is when you give them 12 months to do the work and get better and develop and mess up and have your mentoring there that's non-judgmental to support them through that process, to have faith in them. And every locker room needs a captain and assistant captains. Every locker room has skeptics who challenge the tactics. And your point about succession planning, every leader needs to start thinking about that. And even team leaders, your billing managers who are, have just got into coaching people, they also need to be thinking about who are their captains and who's going to manage the culture when you're not around. And because that's the only way to grow and scale and open up. Otherwise, everybody becomes just a bottleneck in the business. Yeah. And a 50, 60 person business can easily become a 20 person business overnight. We see it all the time because the cracks appear, people get annoyed, they get upset, they're not getting support. The new starter has been twiddling his or her thumbs for 6 months and not getting support, all of that stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, you know what, I'm checking out. Yeah. And the whole thing just crumbles and then you have to rebuild. And I think we've got such a wonderful opportunity now coming out the back of COVID over the next 10 to 12 years to really have some focus and make a difference. But it's getting it's everything we've talked about. It's putting in the macro hat on and looking outwards. It's making sure you've got a solid group of team leaders who can do the operational stuff and make sure that they're developing leaders, that they're investing in. Everybody should be investing in leadership, whether you're a leader by title or not, but we should all be stepping up and acting and looking and feeling like leaders in the business. And then you see this thing grow. Yeah. It's great.
Definitely. And that leads very nicely into one of your key elements and your key brands, which is the 4 Keys method. So first and foremost, what exactly is that? Because I think this is going to really cement what we've just been talking about.
So the 4 Keys method was born out of a personal crisis, if you like. Because I mean, if we go back, it's always been on my mind about health and well-being. I've been in a sports background, and so health and fitness has always been something that came up when I spoke to leaders, even over the last 15 years. And obviously, I have a master's in organizational psychology, and so the business side was always there. I'd always worked in that environment. Mindset because of sports, and I trained as a hypnotherapist back in 2006. I thought I was going to work with golfers, and I was working with traders in the city and doing all that work. But I never talked about relationships. It was always on my mind that as a business owner, or even as an athlete, that if the relationship was starting to unravel or fall apart, or there was tension in the relationship, it would affect the performance in the game or affect the business, the leadership. And it wasn't until, and I mean, to take a step back, and a lot of people know this story anyway, but my father died of a sudden heart attack, aged 48. One minute, we made a lot of money. Then the 1990 crash happened, the property crash, and then 3 years later, he died of a heart attack. Oh. And, it was stress and anxiety, but also all the things that come with it, bad health choices, kind of a self-destruct, if you like, and that really concerned me last year, that people would kind of go into the self-destruct or come out of this thing traumatized. And so that bothered me a lot. But it was actually 2017 when the 4 Keys came about, because by that time I'd written my first book. I was traveling around the world. I had 2 gold medals around my neck from the work I was doing with Team GB. I was being flown around the world business class, giving talks on, how to create a high performance culture with Pfizer, Ericsson, access to PPP. I mean, it was like I was living the dream. And then I came home one day and my wife's bags were packed, and she said, I didn't sign up for this, and took the kids off. And that was the short version, but we separated. And it really hit me. And I started sharing this with some of my clients, actually. I started saying, like, clients I knew well, and they were like, man, it's just tough. It's so hard to keep this, and not just men, but, female entrepreneurs who perhaps carry even more guilt because they feel like they should be at home because of their, perhaps a more maternal instinct or whatever, without getting into that. But so that was coming about a lot. And then I just started saying this business, body, relationships, mindset. And then I kind of gave this talk at a conference, and I just announced this 4 Keys, and that was the end of 2017. People started hashtagging it, and I was like, oh, there's something in this, and And then I pulled together a group of business owners, about 8 of us, and we committed to a 90-day game plan.
Right.
And we said, we're going to wake up, meet every morning at 5:30 a.m. We're going to meditate. We're going to work out. We're going to set targets in our relationships. And we just started kind of creating this concept. And then people started feeding back to me saying, this is changing my life. You know, my relationship is improving. I feel better at work. So we refined it and refined it and refined it. Now what we have, we call it the 10 daily habits, where we do these 10 daily habits every day. And one of those habits is setting 4 key intentions every day. So what am I doing today in my business, body, relationships, and mindset? And so it's evolved over the last, blimey, it's gone quick, 4 years. I wrote a book called The 4 Keys.
Amazing.
That was published in 2019. And it's just gone from there. And I have a mastermind, and it's just a really good group of business owners who are holding each other accountable against these 4 keys. And that's it.
And actually, and again, something else that we talked about before we went live was that, you know, very often leaders don't share vulnerability, and we are human beings at the end of the day. We have relationships. The relationships we have as in a business context, we will work, we will, you know, develop, we will invest in. Well, why on earth wouldn't we do that with our personal relationships, with our partners, with our children, with our siblings, with our friends, and the way that you've wedded it together? I think it's absolutely phenomenal. It's like these 4 pillars, isn't it, of what makes you a human being. But I like the fact that you make each other accountable. So you've got a community immediately. You've got a community of people who, you know, you're sharing that vulnerability, and the fact that you actually, by sharing vulnerability, I think you create real strength. That's actually very authentic strength, and it's not just for the sake of a meme or a like on social media. It's actually genuinely something that's
real.
It's real.
It's real talk. It's not fluffy. It's challenging. You know, we're not. It was interesting because we talked about this off air, and I saw Katie had put a post out today about man up and stuff like that, and that kind of toxic stuff that people might talk about. You know, so, you know, I'm on the fence a little bit, because sometimes there is a place to say to ourselves, not to others necessarily, to ourselves, to say, I think I probably need to man up a little bit, or whatever the language is. But when it becomes just for the sake of it, or it, you know, people don't truly understand, you know, people aren't given the space to speak and to be vulnerable. And this is something I learned with Team GB. You know, you take a high performing group of athletes in a dressing room at an international level, who for the most part, you know, coming into that situation, don't get along with each other, because they're playing a physical sport where they're trying to, you know, beat each other up each week, you know, because of the nature of the game. And then you throw them together in the same dressing room and say, hey, we're going to try and win a gold medal here. And that's that you have to really break down some barriers, and you have to help the players think these things through. And I learned so much from working with Team GB, because, you know, I'd held sales management roles and leadership roles, and there's always that little bit of a danger that we tiptoe around HR issues, and we feel that we can say this and do this. And I suppose when I worked with Team GB, it gave me an opportunity to really flex my leadership in a really authentic way, and to see that shift in the players and the different dialogue. And then I thought, well, if I can do it with Team GB, why can't I do it with 20 or 30 business leaders and get them doing the same, throw them together, who are also, by the way, in competition with each other in some ways. And absolutely. And all of a sudden that feeling, that relaxed feeling of going, actually, this feels good to have this conversation, you know, and be open and honest and challenge each other and say to each other, you know, are you being the best version of yourself here? You know, don't come into this program and moan and whine. Come into this program and bring your truth about yourself. And then all of a sudden people are going, oh, wow. You mean I have to do the work?
People lose their ego a little bit, because I think particularly in recruitment sense, there's a lot of bravado. And I think, again, that's been a slight shift where, you know, because of, you know, people, we were all forced to work remotely, whether we liked it or not. Obviously, some people had to put a lot of their team on furlough. And I think, you know, there's the dialogue around what was inherently a recruitment, you know, the longest day, we work longer hours than you. Look at us, we're doing, you know, 12 hours and then we're going out and getting drunk and everything. And I think the dialogue has shifted, where it's going back to you 4 keys.
Minds have changed.
Mindset and looking after our health, and actually, you know what, I'm taking today off. I'm going to go and play golf or go for whatever it might be. Right. So do you think that
And not feel guilty about it.
Yeah, not feel guilty.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a number of things that we've got to be mindful of as well from a sociological perspective, is that the people that we're referring to, you know, people go, remember the 80s, you know, in the night, you know, you sound like someone from the 80s when you talk like, you know, work hard, play hard, you know, last one out the bar, first one in the office, you know, all that kind of stuff. But there was we have to be mindful that this group of people are baby boomers and have come off the back of a very militant environment, you know, post-war trauma, you know, stiff upper lip, march forward, keep going, you know, work hard, work ethic, join an organization, work for 30 years, get, you know, all that whole psychological contract has been just torn up in front of us, you know, even it happened to our parents. And so I think there is a bit of a shift in that respect that, and we have to be a little bit careful of that, because we can't go too far the other way, because we still have to turn up and work. We still have to turn up and give a good service. We still have to, if we want to achieve something, we have to take action, right? And so we can't just sort of go, well, you know, life will be fine, because unfortunately it doesn't. You know, if you don't take action, if you don't put the effort in, if you're not proactive, things start to unravel. But I do agree that we don't have to put that level of pressure on ourselves. And actually, you know, and it's a bit of a cliche to work smart, not hard, but the reality is the opportunity is there. And that we got to ask ourselves, why am I pushing myself so hard? Where's this work ethic coming from? Why am I driving myself into the ground? And when we hold the mirror up to ourselves and start asking those questions, people go, oh, it feels a bit like therapy. Well, yeah, do the work, you know, hold the mirror up to yourself, because what are you going to do? Just continue like this for the rest of your life? Or are you going to say, there has to be another way here than doing work in this way? You know, you can't justify not seeing your kids from the age of 1 to 7 and think it's just part of living life. That's not a reality, because life is way too short for that.
It is.
You know, enjoy your golf game. And that's what I mean, that stress and burnout comes from when we feel that we should be somewhere else. Yeah, no. Kids,
being mindful in the task that you're actually doing. There's a very famous Mariella Frostrup phrase, which we're going back 20 years ago even, where she said that, you know, it was all about being a working mum at the time. You know, you feel like when you're at work, you feel guilty you're not with your kids, and when you're with your kids, you feel guilty you're not in work. And I used to always, when I first set my business up, when my eldest daughter was born, you know, that even then, this is only 16, 17 years ago, I felt like I had to make an excuse if I was having some time off with my daughter. And I think it's just my advice is always to leaders who seem to be struggling with that. You know, we are a meritocracy, ultimately. That is what is the beautiful part of our industry. And I truly believe in what you've just said there. I think, you know, you can't just coast through and expect to be, you know, profitable, a market leader, hire the best people. You have to put the work in. It's as simple as that.
And by the way, that sometimes means doing 16-hour days for a week.
Yeah, of course it does.
But it's do the 16-hour days, be present with what you're doing, manage the expectations at home, make sure that you get up and do your meditation or your 30-minute walk, whatever it is. And be proactive, and then don't feel guilty the following week because you're not doing 16-hour days. You know, because all of a sudden you've created space for yourself to enjoy the afternoon every day. And I think that's when we're so in that intense 12-hour day. You know, when all of a sudden we work a 4-hour day, we go, oh, this doesn't feel right.
Right.
No, but it is what it is. So enjoy it. You know, enjoy your afternoon, and you know, not feel that you've got to find something to do, because that's an employee mindset, you know.
It is, it's that presenteeism, isn't it? And I totally agree with you. And I think maybe it's because I'm older, I don't know. Maybe it's because I run my own business. I think having worked through the last 18 months as well, you just feel, God, you almost feel like you want to reward yourself for the time that you have. But I just think it's very simple, whether you've got a 100-person business or a 3-person business, just be in the moment of what you're doing, be really focused on your mindset, which I think is why the 4 Keys method is, I just find it's fascinating. I imagine it's quite, I don't want to say simple, but it can be quite.
It is simple.
It is.
Simple is hard. Simple is hard. That's the problem.
You know, people often, because I mean, I'm very public in the fact that I live a sober life now. And for me, you know, I'm single mum on my own there's no dad around, with 2 teenagers, you know, full on social secretary to them, you know, running a full-time business, but I still make time every single day to do at least 15,000 steps, and I hit every day. And people are like, and I make my own food, I don't eat any fast food at all. And they're just like, how am I? Because I've just ensured that I've simplified everything. And when I'm doing that, I'm doing that. And I make it part of my routine. I don't have to overthink it.
Well, the value, I think the contrast between the output of living life that way, of sobriety and eating well and training, it starts to really outweigh the enjoyment of having a few drinks on a Friday night versus then a hangover on the Saturday morning, and the pain. All of a sudden, you know, the gap gets wider and wider. You go, hey, it's much better over here. You know, that's I mean, a lot of people that come into our program we take tactical breaks from alcohol, you know, 30 days, 90 days, because productivity goes up massively when people cut alcohol out. And that's certainly been my experience. I didn't drink a lot. I always say, you know, I never had a drink problem. It's just the majority of my problems came from drinking. And, you know, it was, and I'd have the odd binge, and, you know, I'd be ordering shots at 2 a.m. and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden you go, why are we doing this? And I had a beer on Christmas Day. I've not had a drink since. And a lot of guys, you know, in the program, they say, I'm not sure if I'll drink again. I really, you know, and they're really puzzled by it. Yeah, they're really confused.
It's so inherent in our industry, and, you know, it's seen as a reward. It's the social side of it, and I think people are just bemused, I think, by sobriety, because they think, how on earth can you have a great time? And it's like, you know, the days where you've not had a drink for a while and you feel great and you're energized and you've got a great mindset and you're not moody and you're calm. That's how life is every single day. Yeah, you're still going to have dark moments. You're still going to have very stressful moments, but you are able to deal with it. And for me personally, it's just been an absolute revelation in terms of finding contentment every single day in what I do, because I'm mindful of everything that I do. So I just think it's, for me, if people are looking to really understand their own well-being, you know, alcohol, it actually dulls your light. It doesn't enhance your light, and it turned my light off.
I certainly recommend a break. Yeah, I mean, if you give up, you give up. I always say to people, don't give up. Just take a break. Take a 30-minute break. Yeah, take a 90-day break. Sorry, 30-day break, a 90-day break. And then
30-minute break if you really...
ask us, 30-minute break. For some people, that could be quite a long time.
Could be. the pre-leash, that was definitely probably quite towards the end, I would say, so definitely. I mean, you've just, you know, you've got so much energy, and I think I can see why, you know, obviously leaders across the world are you know, really value everything that you do and the content that you bring to the channels that you do. And, you know, your international sports background is just, it makes you very unique in that. I think the leadership and the sort of the business coach pool that there is, you know, there's so many amazing people out there. I'm sure you've got, like I have a great cohort of competitors, you have too. And I think but you've got a very distinct advantage. And I want to kind of, I guess, throw a bit of a challenging sort of thought in there that, you know, recruiters are often seen as these competitive, you know, we're going to get to the first line. I want to be the biggest. I want to be the best. I want to be the most profitable. But actually, is being competitive a quality that leaders should have as they look to scale and grow their teams?
Yeah, that's a really good question about competitiveness. And we certainly see in recruitment that there is a DNA in a high billing consultant. They typically are outrageously competitive in some cases, and I'm talking about top 10%. You know, the one that is just seems to be that bit further ahead. And again, it comes back to the question earlier. You know, what's the drive to be like this? Is it to make more money? Is it something else? My experience is that the leadership isn't always the best path for those people who are just driven. They come to a point maybe where they want to move into leadership, or they get burnt out because it's not, they either get bored of the process, or, you know, and the money's not as important as it used to be. But I think there is a pocket of people who are incredibly competitive, and they tend to, and the danger is that businesses then say, can I just find 10 more like that? And I'm telling you, you do not want 10 people like that in your dressing room. because, and often we've heard this a lot where they've had to let go of a top biller because perhaps they don't collaborate as well, and they don't mix with the team as well, or and it's always elbows up and getting to the front, and actually when you see, and it's the same in sports, when you see a consultant like that leave the business, everybody can breathe, and actually everyone starts to level up, and
it's quite
and
toxic,
finds a way to,
isn't it?
It can be. I don't want to not.
Yeah.
But I think your question around being competitive, or what makes a business competitive, and in my experience is that the more collaborative the business is internally, the more competitive the business is, rather than trying to create really competitive people. So there is a little bit of a Darwinian element where, we saw this at S3, particularly across the brands, the Huxley and Progressive and Real, they aggressively competed with each other.
Yeah.
But in a sense, that created collaboration within, and camaraderie and glue within the brands. And so you had this kind of, is that healthy at an individual level? I mean, in a sales environment, you always have the leaderboard, and you see that, and some people will thrive on that. But I could even take the mastermind group, the more they collaborate, the more they support each other, the more they level up. Yeah. And so there's something about collaboration, I think, being the new competitiveness, if you like. And it's always been like that. I just think that perhaps, I don't want to get into too political here, but the misunderstanding around capitalism is a misunderstanding there, and then it gets a bad rap because of that. Versus if you look at the best organizations that come from tech and all these different sectors, the way they collaborate is what makes them more effective.
They raise each other up.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that business owners, business leaders should seek that out more.
Yeah.
Whether it's around the boardroom or with other companies that they might perceive as competitors, there may be better opportunities to have a conversation about supporting each other and so on. Or it might be in the same sector outside. I don't know, but I just think there's an opportunity there. So your question is competitiveness important? My experience is a competitive advantage comes from good collaboration.
Yeah, I agree. And collaboration creates community. And I think that's where things have shifted slightly. And it starts with you, the listener. You're listening to this now. Take on board what Andrew said. It starts with you. And I think you can have a much more holistic approach to how to make your business more successful, but how to ensure that you're attracting the best people to your business that want to continue to raise everybody up. And I think it's just a better experience for everybody. God, there's been so much. I mean, my mind's like that. Wow. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Cool. We covered a lot, haven't we?
We've covered a lot.
I think that whether you're a grad starting in recruitment or a seasoned CEO running an organization, like you say, I think that the final thought is it starts with you. Focus on what the people that I've worked with who have a winning mindset, if you like, and I don't want to contradict what I'm saying, but because we could debate what a winning mindset is, but there are people who focus on the positive, not the negative. They only care about things that they can control and influence rather than things that are outside the control or things that annoy them, or, so COVID was a great example last year. The ones that really thrived are the ones that it's happening, it exists. Yeah. What I can only focus on is what I can influence. And those people would have not only done better during that traumatic period, but also just been happier.
Yeah.
Overall,
What's to be said for that? Control your controllables.
Absolutely. And again, intellectually people go, yeah, I get it. Emotional level, it's hard. And if you're having that challenge, that's where the work begins, to hold the mirror up and say, okay, what do I need to be doing more of or less of to be able to deal with these situations?
Yeah, absolutely love it. Well, look, I mean, we're going to make sure that all your links are attached to this episode. I knew I'm just beaming because I think there's so much value in what you've talked about today. And thank you on behalf of everybody, because what you share is just so uplifting, rewarding, valuable. And I think you've kept our whole sector very buoyant during a very difficult time. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Likewise. Thank you for the work you do. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you. That's brilliant.